Green Valley Hospital was always loud in the morning. Doctors walked fast through the bright white halls. Nurses pushed carts filled with medicine. Phones rang again and again. Machines made soft beeping sounds. Everyone looked busy. Everyone looked important. And then there was Marcus Hill. He walked slowly. He pushed a small gray cleaning cart with one squeaky wheel. In his hand was a mop. His uniform was light blue, a little faded from many washes. His black shoes were old but clean. His name tag was small. Most people did not even read it. Marcus kept his head down as he cleaned the floors near the main hallway. He moved carefully, making sure every corner was spotless. He worked quietly, almost like a shadow. Many people walked past him. Very few noticed him. Some doctors talked loudly as they passed. They spoke about surgeries, about new equipment, about their long hours. They did not lower their voices. They did not look at Marcus. To them, he was just the janitor. At the nurse's station, two young doctors stood with coffee cups in their hands. They were new at the hospital. Their white coats were bright and fresh. Their shoes were shiny. They laughed as they talked. One of them looked at Marcus for a moment. He watched Marcus wipe the same floor twice to make sure it was clean. Then he shook his head and laughed. "Imagine working here for 20 years and still pushing a mop," he said. The other doctor smirked. "Some people just don't try hard enough." They did not whisper. They did not care who heard them. Marcus heard every word. His hands stopped for just 1 second. Only 1 second. Then he continued cleaning. His face did not change. He did not look angry. He did not look hurt. But inside, something moved quietly in his heart. This was not the first time he had heard words like that. He had learned how to stay calm. He had learned how to stay silent. As he moved down the hallway, a small girl sitting in a wheelchair watched him. She had curly hair and big brown eyes. She smiled at him. "Good morning, Mr. Marcus," she said softly. Marcus stopped and smiled back. "Good morning, Lily," he replied kindly. "How are you feeling today?" "Better," she said. "Thank you for bringing me that book yesterday." Marcus nodded. "Anytime." He continued walking. He knew many patients by name. He remembered who liked apple juice and who preferred orange. He remembered which room had soft music playing and which room had a worried family waiting outside. He noticed everything, even if no one noticed him. Later that morning, Marcus cleaned near the emergency room doors. He always paid attention there. He watched doctors move fast. He listened to the words they used. He looked at the charts when no one was watching, not because he was curious, but because he understood, more than anyone knew. As he wiped a window, his eyes reflected something deeper than a simple janitor's job. There was knowledge in his eyes. There was experience. There was something heavy that he carried quietly every day. A senior nurse named Carla walked past him. She was older and kinder than most. "Morning, Marcus," she said warmly. "Morning, Carla," he replied. She paused for a moment and looked at him carefully. She had always felt there was something different about him. "You doing all right?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Just another busy day." She smiled and walked away. Marcus stood still for a moment after she left. He looked down at his hands. Strong hands. Steady hands. Hands that once held medical textbooks late at night. Hands that once practiced careful stitches on training pads. Hands that once dreamed of wearing a white coat. But life had taken a different path. And now those same hands held a mop. He did not hate his job. He did not feel ashamed. But sometimes, when he heard laughter behind his back, it reminded him of the dream he had placed deep inside his heart. The dream no one knew about. As he turned the corner, the two young doctors passed him again. One almost bumped into him but did not apologize. Marcus stepped aside politely. They kept walking. One day they would remember this moment. One day they would remember the man they did not see. But for now, Marcus was just the quiet janitor in the hallway. The man no one noticed. And maybe that was exactly how he wanted it. Because sometimes, the quietest person in the room carries the biggest story. And before this week was over, the entire hospital would learn who Marcus Hill truly was. That night, after his shift ended, Marcus did not go straight home. The hospital hallways became quiet after 10 p.m. The bright lights felt softer. The noise slowly disappeared. Only a few nurses walked around. The smell of cleaning soap filled the air. Marcus locked his cleaning cart in the small storage room. But instead of leaving, he walked toward the hospital library. Most people did not even know the hospital had a library. It was small and hidden on the third floor. Old medical books filled the shelves. Dust sat quietly on many of them. Marcus turned on a small lamp near the corner table. He sat down. From his bag, he took out a thick notebook. The cover was worn and bent. Inside were pages filled with neat handwriting. Medical notes, diagrams, definitions, drawings of the human heart, the lungs, the brain. Marcus opened a book about emergency medicine. He read slowly, carefully, like someone who still belonged there, because once he did. Years ago, Marcus Hill was not pushing a mop. He was wearing a student badge. He had been one of the top students at a respected medical school. His professors believed in him. They said he had sharp eyes and calm hands. They said he stayed steady even under pressure. Marcus had loved studying. He would stay up late reading about surgeries. He practiced tying surgical knots again and again until his fingers moved perfectly. He did not want fame. He did not want money. He only wanted to help people. But life can change in one phone call. During his second year in school, his father became very sick. Very suddenly. The hospital bills became too heavy. His mother could not work. His younger sister was still in high school. Marcus had a choice: finish his dream or save his family. He chose his family. He left school quietly. He told no one how much it hurt. He took the first job he could find at Green Valley Hospital. He told himself it would only be for a short time. But time passed quickly. His father passed away. His sister finished school. His mother slowly recovered. And Marcus stayed. Some nights were harder than others. Like tonight, he looked around the empty library. He ran his hand over the pages of the book. His eyes closed for a moment. He could almost hear his old professor's voice. "Medicine is not just knowledge, Marcus," the professor once said. "It is heart. And you have heart." Marcus opened his eyes again. He did not cry. He rarely cried. But there was a quiet pain that never fully left. Suddenly, he heard footsteps outside the library door. He quickly closed the book halfway. A young nurse named Emily peeked inside. "Oh, sorry," she said softly. "I didn't know anyone was here." Marcus smiled politely. "Just reading." Emily looked at the medical book on the table. Her eyes widened slightly. "You understand this?" she asked with surprise. Marcus nodded gently. "A little." Emily stepped closer. "This is advanced emergency material." Marcus paused. He could lie. He could pretend. But something inside him felt tired of hiding. "I studied medicine a long time ago," he said quietly. Emily blinked in shock. "You were in medical school?" "Yes," Marcus replied calmly. "I had to leave." She looked at him differently now. Not like a janitor. Not like someone invisible. But like someone who carried a story. "Why didn't you ever tell anyone?" she asked. Marcus smiled softly. "It doesn't change my job." Emily looked down at his notebook. She flipped a few pages carefully. Her face showed pure surprise. "These notes are detailed," she whispered. "You still study?" Marcus nodded. "Why?" she asked gently. He looked at the open book again. "Because I never stopped loving it." Silence filled the small room. The hospital clock ticked loudly on the wall. Emily did not laugh. She did not judge. Instead, she felt something heavy in her chest. "You know," she said slowly, "some of the doctors here don't even read this much." Marcus gave a small laugh. "They are busy." Emily shook her head. Still, she closed the notebook carefully and handed it back to him. "You shouldn't hide this," she said. Marcus looked at her kindly. "Sometimes," he said softly, "people only see what they expect to see." Emily stood there for a moment longer. Then her pager beeped loudly. "I have to go," she said quickly. "But Marcus," He looked up. You deserve more than people think. She left. Marcus sat alone again. He stared at the pages in front of him. Maybe she was right. Maybe one day things would change. Or maybe they would not. But no matter what happened, he would continue learning. Because deep inside, he was not just a janitor. He was still a healer at heart. And very soon, the hospital would see the man behind the mop. The next morning did not feel normal. There was tension in the air at Green Valley Hospital. The emergency room was already full before noon. Ambulances came and went. Nurses moved quickly. Doctors spoke louder than usual. Marcus was cleaning near the emergency entrance. He could feel the pressure in the air. He had worked here long enough to know when something serious was about to happen. Then it did. The glass doors of the emergency room opened fast. Paramedics rushed in with a stretcher. On it was a teenage boy, maybe 16 years old. His face was pale. His shirt was covered in blood. His chest moved weakly. Car accident, one paramedic shouted. Severe chest trauma. Low oxygen. The boy's mother ran behind them, crying loudly. Please save him. Please, she begged. Doctors surrounded the stretcher immediately. The young doctors from before were among them. Their faces were serious now. No laughter. No jokes. Move him to room 3, one doctor ordered. Marcus stepped back to clear the way, but his eyes followed the stretcher closely. He noticed the way the boy's neck was tilted, the way his breathing sounded uneven. Something felt wrong. Inside room 3, chaos began. Blood pressure dropping. Oxygen level falling. Prepare for intubation. The doctors moved quickly, but something was not working. The boy's chest rose strangely. The oxygen mask did not seem to help. Marcus stood near the doorway holding his mop. He did not mean to stare, but he could not look away. He listened carefully. He watched the monitor. He watched the boy's throat. The breathing sound was not right. Not just weak. Blocked. One of the young doctors tried to insert a breathing tube. He looked unsure. His hands trembled slightly. Why isn't this working? He whispered. Another doctor shook his head. I don't know. His airway should be clear. Marcus felt his heart beat faster. He knew that sound. He had heard it before during training years ago. Airway obstruction. Maybe internal swelling. Maybe something stuck. He took one step forward. Then he stopped. Who was he to speak? Just a janitor. But the boy's oxygen level dropped again. The monitor beeped faster. The mother's cries echoed in the hallway. Marcus felt something stronger than fear rise inside him. He stepped closer to the door. Excuse me, he said calmly. No one looked at him. He spoke again, louder this time. Check his airway again. There may be swelling deeper in the throat. One doctor turned sharply. This is not your area, he snapped. Step back. Marcus did not argue. He kept his voice steady. The breathing sound is uneven. It's not just chest trauma. Please check again. The room fell into a strange silence for 1 second. Just 1 second. The senior nurse, Carla, looked at Marcus. She remembered the look in his eyes from before. She hesitated. Doctor, she said carefully. It won't hurt to check again. The young doctor looked frustrated. But time was running out. Fine, he muttered. They checked again, this time more carefully. And then, there's swelling, the nurse shouted. Partial blockage. The doctor's eyes widened. How did we miss that? They quickly adjusted their approach. Medication was given to reduce swelling. The airway was cleared properly. Seconds later, the oxygen level slowly began to rise. The beeping sound became steady. The room felt lighter. The boy's chest moved more smoothly now. Outside the room, his mother collapsed into a chair, crying with relief. Inside, the doctors stared at the monitor in shock. It had worked. The young doctor slowly turned his head toward the doorway. Marcus was still standing there quietly, holding his mop, not smiling, not proud, just calm. The doctor walked toward him slowly. How did you know that? He asked, his voice lower now. Marcus shrugged gently. It sounded wrong. That's not something you just guess, the doctor said. Marcus looked down for a moment. I've heard it before. Carla stepped closer. He studied medicine, she said quietly. The doctor's face changed. What? Marcus did not speak. The room felt different now. No one laughed. No one smirked. For the first time, they were not looking at a janitor. They were looking at a man who had just helped save a life. The young doctor swallowed hard. He remembered his own words from yesterday. Some people just don't try hard enough. Now those words felt heavy in his chest. Marcus turned slightly to leave. He did not wait for praise. He did not expect thanks. As he walked back into the hallway, the hospital did not look the same anymore. Something had shifted. Whispers began spreading quickly. The janitor knew. He told them to check again. He saved the boy. Marcus pushed his cart slowly down the hall. But this time, people looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time, the man no one noticed had become the... By the end of the day, the hospital felt different. The story had spread fast. Doctors whispered in corners. Nurses spoke quietly near the break room. Even patients had heard something about the janitor who helped save a life. Marcus tried to ignore it. He kept working like always. He cleaned the hallways. He emptied trash bins. He wiped down handrails. But now, when people passed him, they did not look through him. They looked at him. Some with curiosity. Some with confusion. Some with shame. Near the nurse's station, the two young doctors stood silently. They were not laughing today. One of them crossed his arms. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. "How does a janitor know emergency airway signs?" The other doctor looked uneasy. "Maybe he used to work in healthcare," he said quietly. The first doctor shook his head. "Even then, that kind of knowledge is not basic." Across the hallway, Nurse Carla watched them. She knew something they did not, and she knew it was time. Later that afternoon, Marcus was called to the hospital director's office. That had never happened before. Marcus cleaned his hands, straightened his uniform, and walked slowly down the long carpeted hallway toward the office. People watched him pass. Inside the office, the hospital director, Mr. Harrison, sat behind a large wooden desk. He was a serious man with gray hair and sharp eyes. "Please sit down, Marcus," he said calmly. Marcus sat quietly. There was no anger in the room, only curiosity. "I heard what happened in the emergency room," Mr. Harrison said. Marcus nodded slightly. "The doctors told me you suggested they check the airway again." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied softly. The director leaned forward. "How did you know?" Marcus looked down at his hands. He had avoided this moment for years. He had stayed quiet. He had hidden his past. But now the truth was standing in front of him. "I studied medicine," Marcus said simply. The director blinked. "You studied medicine?" "Yes, sir. I completed 2 years of medical school." The room became very quiet. Mr. Harrison leaned back slowly in his chair. "Where?" he asked. Marcus named the university. The director's eyebrows lifted slightly. It was not an ordinary school. It was one of the best in the state. "Why did you leave?" the director asked. Marcus swallowed gently. "My father became very sick," he said. "My family needed money. I was the only one who could help." "So you dropped out?" "Yes, sir." "And you came here as a janitor?" Marcus nodded. The director stared at him for a long moment. "Why stay here?" he asked. "Why not return to school?" Marcus gave a small, honest smile. "Life moves forward," he said. "My mother needed care. My sister needed help finishing school." Years passed. The director looked at the man sitting in front of him. This was not the story of someone who lacked ambition. This was the story of someone who sacrificed everything. "Do you still study?" the director asked quietly. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sir. At night, in the hospital library." The director stood up and walked to the window. Outside, ambulances moved in and out of the parking area. He thought about the hospital's mission, about helping people, about heart and service. Then he turned back. "Do you have proof of your education?" he asked. Marcus nodded again. I kept my records. Bring them to me tomorrow, the director said firmly. Marcus stood. Yes, sir. As he walked out of the office, his heart beat faster than it had during the emergency. He had not planned for this. He had not wanted attention. He only wanted to help. Back in the hallway, the two young doctors stood near the elevator. They watched Marcus step out of the director's office. One of them felt something twist inside his chest. He remembered laughing. He remembered mocking. Now he felt small. That evening, Marcus returned home to his small apartment. He opened a dusty box from the top shelf of his closet. Inside were old textbooks, old notes, and a folder. He opened the folder carefully. There were official letters, transcripts, a recommendation letter from his former professor. You have the hands and heart of a true healer, the letter read. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. He had buried this part of his life, not because he was ashamed, but because it hurt to remember. The next morning, the hospital would see the proof. And once the truth was confirmed, things would never go back to the way they were. Because the man behind the mop was no longer just a rumor. He was a story. And now, everyone wanted answers. The next morning felt heavy. Word had already spread that Marcus would meet with the hospital director again. People tried to act normal, but curiosity filled the air. Nurses whispered while checking charts. Doctors avoided eye contact with each other. Even the front desk staff seemed quieter than usual. Marcus arrived early. He wore his same blue janitor uniform. His shoes were still worn. Nothing about him looked different. But inside his bag was the folder. The proof. He walked calmly to the director's office. This time, the door was slightly open. Inside, Mr. Harrison was not alone. The senior medical board members were seated around the table. 3 experienced doctors, the head nurse, and the 2 young doctors who had laughed at him. The room went silent when Marcus entered. He felt every eye on him. Good morning, he said politely. Good morning, Marcus, the director replied. Please, come in. Marcus stepped forward and placed the folder gently on the table. These are my records, he said. The director opened the folder slowly. One by one, the documents were passed around the table. Transcripts, grades, letters, official stamps, real. The head doctor adjusted his glasses as he read. These grades, he murmured quietly. Top of the class. The second board member flipped through the pages. He was on the surgical track, she said softly. The young doctors looked down at the papers in front of them. One of them felt his throat tighten. This was no story. This was truth. The director cleared his throat. Marcus left medical school due to family emergency, he said firmly. Not because of failure. Silence filled the room again. The head nurse, Carla, looked proud. She had always known there was more to him. One of the senior doctors leaned forward. Why did you never tell anyone? He asked Marcus directly. Marcus answered calmly. No one asked. The simple words hit harder than anyone expected. No one asked. The young doctor who had mocked him felt heat rise in his face. He remembered standing in the hallway with his coffee. He remembered laughing. Now those words echoed loudly in his mind. Some people just don't try hard enough. He swallowed deeply. The director closed the folder. Marcus, he said carefully, you saved a patient yesterday. Marcus shook his head gently. The team saved him, he replied. But you saw what we missed, the director said. Marcus did not respond. The senior doctor leaned back in his chair. We are facing a serious shortage of experienced emergency staff, he said slowly. And here we have someone with strong training, strong knowledge, and strong character. Everyone understood what he was suggesting. The director looked directly at Marcus. If we gave you a chance to return to medicine, would you take it? The question hung in the air. Marcus had not expected this. His dream had been buried for so long that he had learned to live without it. His hands tightened slightly. I don't know if it's still possible, he said honestly. The senior doctor nodded. It would require review, exams, possibly re-enrollment in a program. It would not be easy. Marcus almost smiled. I never expected easy, he said. The two young doctors exchanged a look. Something had changed inside them. The first one finally spoke. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. The room turned toward him. I judged you, he continued. I thought I knew who you were. I was wrong. Marcus looked at him calmly. I understand, he said. But the young doctor shook his head. No, he said. You don't. I was arrogant. The second young doctor lowered his eyes. We both were. The room felt different now. Not tense. Not uncomfortable. But honest. The director stood up. We will contact the university, he said firmly. We will see what steps are needed. Marcus, this hospital values skill and heart. You have both. Marcus felt something rise in his chest. Hope. Something he had not allowed himself to feel for years. He nodded slowly. Thank you, he said softly. As he left the room, the hallway outside felt brighter. People watched him again. But this time there was no laughter. No smirks. Only respect. Near the emergency room, the mother of the teenage boy from yesterday approached him. Tears filled her eyes. They told me what you did, she said, holding his hand. You helped save my son. Marcus felt emotional but stayed calm. I'm glad he's breathing, he replied gently. She hugged him tightly, and for the first time in many years, Marcus did not feel invisible. He walked back down the hallway slowly, still wearing his janitor uniform, still pushing his cleaning cart. But something inside him had changed. The truth was no longer hidden. The hospital could not ignore it. And now, his story was just beginning. The hospital felt different after the meeting. Not loud, not tense, but thoughtful. People were thinking about Marcus, about themselves, about how quickly they had judged a man without knowing his story. 2 days later, Marcus was called to the director's office again. This time, he did not feel nervous. He felt curious. When he entered, the director was smiling slightly. That was fast, Marcus thought. Please sit, Mr. Harrison said. On the desk was a phone, still warm from a recent call. I spoke with the university, the director said. They still have your records. Marcus felt his heartbeat grow stronger. The dean remembers your name, the director continued. He said you were one of their strongest students. Marcus lowered his eyes. He had not expected that. They are willing to review your case, the director said. You would need to pass updated exams, some training hours, but they are open to your return. Return. The word echoed in Marcus's mind. For years, he had forced himself not to imagine this moment. He had trained his heart to stay quiet, but now that quiet heart was beating loudly. I'm older now, Marcus said softly. It has been many years. The director nodded. Yes, but knowledge does not disappear, and skill can return. Marcus looked out the window for a moment. He imagined walking through hospital doors not with a mop, but with a stethoscope. He imagined standing beside a patient's bed not to clean the floor, but to save a life. Then doubt tried to enter his mind. What if I fail? He asked honestly. The director leaned forward. You already proved you belong in that room, he said firmly. You saw what trained doctors missed. Marcus did not feel proud. He felt responsible. Later that afternoon, he walked back to his small storage room. He looked at his cleaning cart, the squeaky wheel, the faded mop. This cart had been his partner for years. It had fed his family. It had carried him through quiet nights and long shifts. He ran his hand along the handle gently. I'm not leaving you yet, he whispered, because nothing had changed. Not officially. He still had exams to pass. He still had to prove himself. That evening, he went to the hospital library again. But this time, he did not sit alone. Nurse Emily joined him. She carried fresh notebooks and a small smile. I heard, she said excitedly. Is it true? Marcus nodded quietly. They are giving you a chance, she said. Yes, he replied. She sat down across from him. Then we study, she said confidently. Marcus smiled. You don't have to help, he said. I want to, she answered. You helped save a life. Now let us help you save yours. For the first time in many years, Marcus did not study in silence. He solved practice questions. He reviewed anatomy. He explained procedures out loud. And Emily listened carefully. Days turned into weeks. The hospital staff began noticing something new. Marcus no longer walked with his head low. He walked with purpose. Still humble, still kind, but stronger. One afternoon, the two young doctors approached him near the cafeteria. They looked nervous. "Marcus," one of them said, "we heard you are preparing for exams." "Yes," Marcus replied calmly. The second doctor cleared his throat. "If you would like, we can help review surgical cases with you." Marcus looked at them. He saw regret in their eyes, but he also saw growth. "I would appreciate that," he said simply. That evening, something unexpected happened. In a small hospital conference room, a janitor sat at a table reviewing medical cases with two doctors. Not as a cleaner, not as an outsider, but as a future colleague. Respect was no longer forced. It was real. As the weeks passed, the hospital slowly adjusted to the idea. Marcus Hill was not just the janitor anymore. He was a man walking toward his second chance. The teenage boy he helped save was recovering well. One day, the boy's mother stopped Marcus in the hallway again. "My son wants to meet the man who helped him," she said warmly. Marcus entered the room. The boy smiled weakly. "Thank you," he whispered. Marcus placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You fought hard," Marcus said. "You did the work." As he left the room, he realized something important. He had never stopped being a healer. Even without the title, even without the coat, the door to his dream had not been locked forever. It had only been closed. And now, it was opening again.